What's up everyone, Alex here. So the topic of this video today is going to be about an update for PPSSPP, which is version 1.14.2, but we're going to cover some different topics. And the first one is that I've actually modded the buttons for my Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, and I'm now using the PSP PS Vita style buttons, which you can buy on AliExpress, so I'll leave a link to those. Unfortunately, this modification is quite difficult. So not only do you have to, of course, open the case, but when you're taking out the different parts, these circuits are quite tightly fitted. So for example, these buttons on the side, you have to get the circuit board nicely wedged in, and there's a couple of ribbon cables which can be a little difficult. It's tougher on the face button side, it's easier on the D-pad. And also when you buy these buttons, you know, they don't have the exact same fittings as the Retroid Pocket ones, so you have to sand these down, like sand the bottoms of the plastic, and all I needed was sandpaper to do this, fortunately, so you don't need like crazy gear or anything. And yeah, so it took a little bit of time, but I think the results are definitely worth it. And I've also ordered a black Retroid Pocket shell because I really want to see this in black. I love black, so that's what I want to do. So yeah, I'm going to leave some links to a couple of people who have done this as well, and I've also left a Reddit post with how I've described my process with it, so if you want to check that out, that's yeah, give it a look. I've also had some people ask about the launcher I'm using right here. This is Pegasus, and this is a version of Pegasus that I personally modified, and I was using it exclusively on my Odin until I wanted to get the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. And so you can download Pegasus for Android, and there is an installer which helps you to just get it up and running, because otherwise there's quite a bit of fuss getting some of these like emulator, because when you open this, for example, whenever you pick one of these games, it needs to know that it needs to open RetroArch, and it needs to know which core it's going to load as well. So that's called metadata, and it will try and do this for you. I did everything manually though. This was a really fun project I did last year in the summer, and I really like this theme. This is called the Shin Retro theme, and I also wrote this music and sound effects for it as well, and that was just a really awesome personal project of mine. I really enjoyed doing that. I had to learn a little bit of code to edit some of these functions and get it working the way I liked. But yeah, you can download this, and the official creator of this theme checked out what I did and decided to implement the music and sound effects. So you can either get my version, which I've uploaded, or you can get the version the author has applied some of my updates to, which is really cool of them. So that was a nice thing of them to do. And my version is different because I've got stuff like Rosalina. That still makes me laugh, just because one YouTube video I did, people were like, "Oh," and it just, you know. And I kind of like Android 18 as a kind of mascot for Android games. So I made all these little videos, and I love this. Everybody's using Daijishu, and Daijishu is really good, right? I would absolutely recommend anybody who wants a front end with no problems to just get that. But for me, this is the ultimate front end. I absolutely love it. There's only a few problems, for example, like because certain emulators are not up to date. If I want to go to Nintendo GameCube, if I pick one of these games, so let's say Billy Hatcher, and then I try to load a save state, it won't find them, and I don't know if it loads my settings either. So the workaround to this is to just make buttons for the emulators themselves. So I can just load in from there, and it's fine. That works great for me. But you know, it's also a really good way of just like looking around and seeing what games you want to play. Works especially well for more retro games. So if I'm sitting around laying in bed thinking, oh, I'd love to play some SNES game, I can just like zip through these and have a good look. So yeah, that's for everybody who's asked a little bit about Pegasus. It's my favorite front end, but it's not the easiest to use, so just bear that in mind. Whilst I'm here, I want to make a mention that with 3DS Citra, I don't think it's Citra MMJ, but I think it's the official version of Citra. Somebody is currently working on a way to implement Vulkan, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but the moment we do get a version of Citra with a Vulkan backend, I'm going to be testing that immediately and doing a video on it, because it's very likely it's going to work very well on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. So we might even get even more 3DS games that are playable on this device at that time, which is going to be super cool. And also later this month, we should be getting a Vita 3K for Android. It's been on PC for a while, but they've been working on an Android version, and I don't know if the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus is going to be capable of run. I don't know. It depends on the games. If it might do 2D games. You might have to think of the level of complication one to like the Nintendo Switch, where it runs some 2DS games pretty well, but not 3D. But as soon as that emulator comes out, I'm most likely going to do some videos on that on the Odin, because it's a much more powerful handheld, and that's going to be interesting to see, because I love this as a PSP device, and I think the Odin could be a killer Vita device if it works. Last thing I want to talk about before I go into PSP is I'm going to leave links to this. I think his name is K-E-I-K. Kai, I don't know how you pronounce it, but they have found a way to change the contrast of the screen to be more OLED-like. And I wasn't so sure about it at first, but now the colors are so rich and they just pop. And it's very, very simple to do. I'll show you, I'll leave the links in the description, but if I wanted to do something about it right now, what I would do is I would go to settings, and I would go down to handheld settings. I'd scroll down here to advanced and run script as root and select a script, and then I would make sure to go to my downloads folder, because that's where I've got this folder here. And there's a little bit of setup. So first you need to get a configuration file for your default saturation, which is what your handheld initially was in the first place. So I'll leave the links and watch the video and whatever. Retro Game Core actually covered this as well, so he's got a really handy guide on doing this. So follow that, and at that point you can do what I've just done now, and you can select one of these files. I've made a few of them. My saturation is currently at 1.6, and I thought that was too rich at first, but now I've got used to it. I've seen some of the comparisons and I think it's really nice. So my saturation is set to 1.6, and when you touch one of these files, it'll run the script, and then you need to restart your device for it to work, and then you have really rich colors on your screen now, and it's very similar to an OLED screen, which is really, really awesome. But there have been some people who have said that after they applied this, it affected the performance of their device in some games. I'm not too sure about that. Take that with a pinch of salt. Jesus, that looks really good. Take that with a pinch of salt. I'm not entirely sure. I personally haven't found that doing this has affected the performance of the device at all, but oops, sorry, I just knocked it. But keep that in mind. You can always set your saturation to default, which is the main reason to keep a default setting, just so that you have a backup and you don't screw anything up. Now we're going to go to PSP, and I'm going to run PPSSPP, and you're going to see that we are using version 1.14.2. I'm not sure if this is going to auto download, but just in case, you can go to the PPSSPP website and download the latest APK and sideload that to your device and install it, which I've shown how to do in a previous video. And apparently it has done several bug fixes. Now, I've had to make a small edit here because something I thought was working that I did earlier today is no longer working. So we're going to jump into Outrun. I'm going to show you the settings I currently have as this was solving a problem for me that I couldn't find a fix for online. So there's moments in the game, there's only a few of them, and it's especially at the start of the first Outrun course, where it dips from, like, it will show you on screen as well on the top, it will go from 60 to 30 frames, and it will lock like that for a little while. It's only a small period of time, and it only happens a few times in game, but I actually got that back up to 60 frames without any drops by what I did was I picked OpenGL as my backend, and then I turned auto frame skip on and had frame skipping set to 1. That's how it defaults when you turn auto frame skip on. And I also turned on render duplicate frames to 60. Now I can't change that because with auto frame skip on it will gray out and you can't touch it. So I turned that on before I did anything. And with those settings, it seemed to fix the problem. However, it's not working anymore. So I'm just going to show that by jumping into game. I'm going to press the fast forward button. Outrun mode. So it's the first Outrun track. I guess I'll jump in the Spider. It's a pretty nice looking car. Yeah, it's the first track here where this will happen every single time, at least for me anyway. So I'm curious to see what anybody else thinks of this. Look, it's gone down 30 out of 30. Even though it says 100% speed, it's dipped down and not giving us the 60 frames we should be getting. But once we get around this corner here, it's going to jump back up to 60. Now, I didn't change those settings, but early on today when I played this and was testing things out, when I chose those settings, I didn't have the 30 frames problem. So I'd come to make this video today, and I was going to say, look, here, this is how you fix that 30 frames problem. No, it's not working for some reason. I don't know why. I literally have not changed anything about my device since I played this game. I've not updated any emulators or anything, so it just is what it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a save state here so I can keep on playing, and I'm going to change my settings back to what I originally had them on, which is how I'd normally play on the PSP. So we're going to change the back end back to Vulkan. And these are the global settings, so I need to start the game and then jump into settings, and I'm going to turn off auto frame skip. I'm going to set this back to off. If I have that on, then I can't change this setting, so I'm going to turn that off, and then I'm just going to carry on the game how I'd normally play it. But I just wanted to show that I had those settings on and say that I did witness that first area play fully at 60 frames without dipping down to 30 for any reason. But with the rest of this video, I'm going to show you that, and I do believe it is with this latest version of PPSSPP, that there aren't any like weird graphical glitches anymore in certain areas of these courses. So there were, for example, certain bridges or just little moments in these courses where the whole screen would get covered with like some graphical texture that would just swipe past it. I seem to think this area did it as well, but I can't remember now because it seems to have been fixed, which is nice. And this game is so much fun. I always told myself this would be a really fun one to play if I ever let myself, and recently I have been doing just that because I recently seem to have injured a muscle in my chest, or maybe it was an injury I already had and it just seemed to have like got worse again. So I play a lot of virtual reality, and sometimes I play it a bit more than I should. And I was actually speaking to someone recently who also seems to regularly pull a muscle in their shoulder or their chest because of the game we play, which is Population 1, and we're like very good at it. and there's a lot of like pulling and climbing and fast movements. So anyway, that's the story. But yeah, so can't play VR. What do? I'll lay in bed and rest. I should let myself play something on the handheld that I haven't really thought about in a long time. So I spent hours just playing this game. It's so fun. You really start getting into the zone of like the repetition. And you know what, the feel of this console really isn't bad. It is very slim, and there is no grooves to like really latch onto with your fingers or anything, but it is quite comfortable to play. However, there is a particular grip which you can get, which is for the Switch Lite, and it comes from China, so you have to order it from AliExpress, and it will take forever. I still haven't got it yet, and I ordered it earlier on in December, maybe around the 10th or the 15th. I'm hoping to get it within the next week, and it seems to be the only grip that will fit in the Retro Pocket and look pretty decent at the same time. And I'm curious to see what it's like. I'm not usually a fan of grips. I don't know. I mean, I've seen some people like desperately try and make grips for the Mayu Mini, and that device is so tiny, I feel like it defeats the point. But some of these slightly larger ones, when you really will have like an extended period of time to play, how is my time so bad? I always, whenever I record videos, terrible gameplay. Yeah, so with these systems where you have an extended period of time you play on them, I'm curious to see what the grip will be like, because because these sticks are positioned so low, if you're going to play a game and utilize those like for most of the time, it might really come in handy. So I'm going to do a video on that grip if it's any good. Apparently it needs slight modification, but it's going to be nothing in comparison to these PlayStation buttons, because you really got to sand these down, and you know you're like damaging them at this point. So, you know, in for a penny, in for a pound. I watched Knives Out recently, so that saying stuck in my head. But it's so worth doing when you get it right. Because the buttons before on this Atomic Purple were just plain black, and they had no like character to them. And I was really tempted to go to the Retroid site on the DIY section and buy some different buttons. You can get any of the buttons, and I actually thought the retro buttons that are all kind of like pink colored would actually complement the Atomic Purple really well. But if you want to go that route, and it's so much simpler to do, you can buy Retroid buttons and install them in the device, and they'll just slot in and work perfectly. Whereas, for example, with this D-pad, I had to put white tack in so much, just in each different direction, and make sure that this wouldn't slide around and not click too much, because if you don't, this will be extremely clicky. So yeah, so that's the video. I am disappointed I wasn't able to show that fix for Outrun, but there doesn't seem to be any graphical glitches, which is great. So thank you for watching. Give it a like if you like that video, and I'll definitely be doing some more videos soon. So do subscribe and hit that bell icon, and I will see you again very shortly. Bye bye.